This report examines potential solutions and existing problems at the City of Richmond. The Contra Costa grand jury examined information provided to it and came up with findings and recommendations for cities in Contra Costa County. The City of Richmond was included in the fiscal year 2012-13 Grand Jury Report number 1311 entitled Assessing Fiscal Risk, asking the question, who is minding the store? The full report is available online at the Contra Costa Grand Jury's website. All pages of the report are here, and I have highlighted many relevant sections. That should be of interest to community members, but I will focus only on 2 sections presently, and those I have highlighted in red. Section 3B recommends an audit committee be created from City Council members as well as an ad hoc citizens committee. The ad hoc citizens committee is vital to include interested community members and subject matter experts. This would provide transparency to the operations and performance of the entire municipality. Section 3G recommends that the internal audit groups of cities maintain independence by reporting directly to the City Council. A possible structure might look like this. The important functions missing now are the Citizens Ad Hoc Committee, if in fact the already established Finance Committee wants to also take on the role of Audit Committee. Also, a dedicated independent audit function is included in the structure instead of outside internal auditors hired at the discretion of city management. The City of Richmond's full response is also included with absolutely no mention of an ad hoc citizens committee or an internal audit function. Instead, the response indicates that internal finance managers from departments meet monthly with the city manager. Now, having been an internal finance manager, I don't see how this meeting in any way assists to correct the problems that will be detailed later. It is important to note that due to the City of Richmond's 2004 fiscal crisis, that in January 2005, the City Council adopted an ordinance and a new chapter of the Richmond Municipal Code creating an internal audit function. This act of policy has never been implemented. Here shows that in 2006, the City of Berkeley internal auditor gave Richmond praise for having the foresight to understand that an independent audit function would provide the much-needed fiscal oversight that would be a force of improvement. But we don't understand what happened. This shows that in 2005, an auditor position was revised. This position has never been filled. And then later, in 2005, an internal auditor position was created. The internal auditor works under the policy direction of the mayor and the city council. This position has also never been filled. Now we must examine the problems that exist without fundamental, independent oversight. Since there has been a recent surge in unjust disciplinary actions, I wanted to make clear that the opinions expressed here are not represented as those of the City of Richmond and are not meant to misrepresent the city's position in any way. With that said, my report continues. This section will outline systemic problems that warrant immediate solutions. The grand jury cited misuse of the city's credit card in its report. This section includes a small sample of questionable purchases made by library staff. Names have been redacted. City-issued credit cards are public resources, and state law dictates they be used only for city business. Here is the city credit card statement. Names have been redacted. The following slides include charges that were included on this very CalCard statement. It should be noted that this credit card statement shows a total bill due of more than $17,000. The city's monthly maximum limit is $10,000 due to the city's requirement dictating spending exceeding $10,000 be approved by the City Council. A request to the Finance Director for an increase to the monthly limit had to exist for this limit to be exceeded. This is clearly a personal purchase because it is a Bible application for an iPad that can only be used by the purchasing employee. Where's the public benefit to be garnered from this purchase? This is a device for streaming movies from the internet. Since the library does not utilize such a device in its operations, the public benefit for such a purchase is highly questionable. These are iPad games paid for with city tax dollars. These games can be played by a single employee only. Here again, the public benefit for this use of tax dollars, while small, is questionable. I will note the dollar amount is irrelevant as the law is clear that the use of tax dollars for personal enjoyment is unlawful at any dollar amount. $500 in movie gift cards is excessive by our Richmond Public Library standards. Gift cards should be treated like cash and a full accounting should exist. This is a gift of public funds, and the public benefit of such a gift is unknown to date. This device allows an employee to stream music from their iPad through their car speakers. Again, please identify the public benefit of such a purchase. You will hear in the video clips of the Finance Committee meetings included in this report a discussion of these bracelets. It should be noted that a discussion with the employee took place and each of the three bracelets purchased were identified for benefit by the employee, her sister, and her niece. I asked the employee to remit payment to the city for this personal purchase. The employee stated that only if the director required it. This section includes more credit card purchases. The included purchases were made on behalf of a nonprofit that the employee's sibling leads. The nonprofit has since closed. The fact that no memorandum of understanding was executed makes these purchases on the city credit card using tax dollars questionable. A public benefit is non-existent without clear authorization by the City Council for such purchases on behalf of entities outside of the municipality. Civil and criminal penalties can be meted. $200 in Starbucks gift cards for a nonprofit's kids program is questionable. I will quickly move through the next receipts as my point is clear. We will now move on to false grant reporting. There is liability when false records are provided to the federal government. I have included an email exchange. You can slow the video and read each comment if you wish. The contents indicated there was clear knowledge that false reports were willfully submitted regarding a federal stimulus grant. After the denial, the employees finally referred to these as errors when a newspaper reporter inquired. Only then was corrective action taken. Please note, in an environment where systemic corruption is prevalent and no accountability exists, to have corrective action taken is like moving a mountain. The city manager made statements in the newspaper article that he was confident the city could manage its federal grants. We now move on to contract fraud. A library manager executed city contracts with 2 city employees. The employees received paychecks and contract payments for doing similar work. One question to ask is, does every employee get the benefit of contract payments in addition to their payroll when undertaking tasks at the City of Richmond? Information was withheld about a contractor crony that resulted in more than $67,000 in contract payments on top of the employee's paycheck. No bid solicitation was issued for the contract work. The crony received high favor. Staff have reported that the library manager executing this contract would sometimes leave her city-paid job to take on the employee's tasks when the employee was absent. According to city policy, collusion in contracts is deemed malfeasance. According to federal law, willful misclassification of employees comes with large civil penalties. Following are clips from 2 Finance Committee meetings where city staff acts as if they are completely unaware that fraud allegations were posed, even though I was summoned more than a year ago to talk with an internal auditor hired by the Finance Department and City Attorney's Office for 4 hours about each of my allegations. I also provided the same allegations in writing to the city manager and the city attorney. The city manager passed the information on to the interim human resources director. The scope of work for the internal auditor was later changed to ignore all fraud allegations. Reports were made in 2012, yet we find ourselves here in 2013 with complicity, neglect of duty, and denial, among many other things. This is a major reason why internal auditors are to work under the direction and report to the City Council instead of being managed by city staff.
Do you agree with the assertion that there was a series of purchases on CAL cards for personal use?
When I arrived, first in the city, there were some things on a CAL card that had happened before I arrived, and we did contact finance, and there are processes, in place, and there are decisions that we made about how to handle that.
I'd like to ask that question. Are you satisfied that everybody at least had to give the money back that was improperly using the CAL card for personal purposes?
No.
Okay. How many times do you get to charge personal items before you get your card taken away?
I would have to look,
Does anything else bad happen to you besides you get your card taken away?
In the manual, I would have to look at it. That's a finance department document. That's not something I write, but I would have to go back and look at that. I mean, that isn't something that, we sat down and we went over it. And to be honest, there's some of them were things that there were different ways that they said their feeling was some of it was something that was appropriate for what their work was, and I disagreed with that. I'm like, in my opinion, this item, I wouldn't be able to justify that as a work expense. So there were some items there. It was a conversation, between what they considered a work expense and what they weren't all just out buying actual personal items.
Okay, so there was a mixture of items where somebody may have had a good faith belief that
Correct.
It was appropriate even though you disagreed with them, and then other
That's
items
right.
in the mixture of those cases and other cases where clearly it was not appropriate. Like that. Okay, well, with the policy, right? It's kind of like a bank robber goes in and gets caught, and then you say, hey, give the money back and have a nice day. I mean, I don't know if I'm missing what's happening, but that seems to me to be what's going on, and that's kind of a troubling. Right. If that is what's going on, that's kind of a troubling thing, because that's not how you should treat bank robbers or how you should treat city employees. So. I understand what history there is of. I know there was a statement saying no major audit findings, whatever. But to what extent have there been documented personal purchases with this card over the last couple of years?
With this card,
with the Cal card, or
Oh.
either Cal
Well,
card
actually,
or
we have never had any, only one instance. We had a fraudulent event happen about 3 years ago. That was the only instance where we actually discovered that there was a fraudulent use of the Cal card.
And that person was terminated from the city.
due to that fraudulent usage.
Mm-hmm.
We did an audit right after that to examine the entire program and came up with a number of the internal controls you see here today.
Yeah, that was in 2009.
Okay, so that's the only time when you discovered a improper usage of this for personal. Well, I'm sorry, either Cal cards or whatever kind of predecessor card there was.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
In more general terms regarding the library, their purchases are regarding books. Well, we don't know whether the librarian wants the books or not, so the chief librarian signs off on them. Those were a good purchase. We wouldn't review what kind of book you sold here in finance. But what we do review, if the reviewing official says there's something, we will go in and audit it for them. In this case, we hired Kevin Harper, to do an audit of the library based on the question. And he reviewed it and found out essentially that we needed to change the way we did it from using the Cal card for Amazon books. There's a Millennium system which speaks in the audit we presented to you. It states how we can be more thorough in the control of that issue, and that's one of the things that our librarian is implementing right now. So to say hindsight, did we know every book they bought was legitimate? We don't review the legitimacy of the books. We just say it's book, librarian signed off on it. That would be our control unless asked to investigate fraudulently. At no time has the finance department requested to investigate fraudulent behavior in the library regarding this issue that I just heard this morning.
Well then, so no one's requested that any fraudulent behavior be investigated.
We reviewed in our department with the library and found out essentially there were $20 of legitimate charges that could have been, and after we investigate that, there were bracelets, arm bracelets for health.
Right, there were 3 ergonomic bracelets, total of $55, and when I investigated, they were being kept on library property. They were in the library. They were claimed to be helpful for repetitive motion injury. They were probably not a great purchase. They're not in use currently, but I had they were there, they were kept there, and the person who bought them at that time stated that they were bought to be used by staff. That was the investigation. They were on the library premises, kept, with library things. And so was it a great purchase? No. But, the only evidence I would have now that I heard this morning is that someone had a conversation that contradicts what I found. And so, that would be a question of where do we go from that?
Okay, because you're saying $20. We're
55
hearing
would be more
55.
accurate.
50, yeah.
I follow the chain of command in making all allegations before ever approaching outside authorities. Every department even remotely able to take corrective action was informed once indications of fraud were found. After my internal reports were made and the city's zero-tolerance policy against retaliation was repressed, I had to pursue other avenues for complaint. I would hate to see what would become of employees if the city didn't have a zero-tolerance policy against retaliation. Since it does, here are some of the things I have suffered to date. I never expected that issues such as the ones I raised would exist or would not at least be handled in-house. I definitely never anticipated complicity at such high levels of the organization. I am now fully aware of why whistleblower protection laws exist in the United States. Luckily, there are many agencies available to hear about public corruption when the city manager turns a deaf ear. Again, I wanted to make clear that the opinions expressed here are not represented as those of the City of Richmond and are not meant to misrepresent the city's position in any way.